Most champions in League are tied to a region in Runeterra. It could be a place where they were born and raised, where they grew strong enough to become a champion in the game, or maybe a place that they're committed to. In this video, I'm going to continue ranking the top 3 most powerful champions from each region. Check out the previous video if you're interested in Piltover, Zaun, the Void, and Bilgewater. No more stalling, let's get into it with Nexus. I'll say this right away, I'm not ranking LeBlanc for the simple reason we have absolutely no clue about her real power. She's probably one of the strongest beings in Runeterra, but she could also just be really smart and have the ability to live really long, which makes her power level pretty hard to measure. But with that in mind, 3rd place goes to Vladimir. Vlad is extremely old. He's been alive for hundreds of years, and his story starts back with the Great Darken War, which happened over 1,000 years ago, according to the timeline Riot presented in the book Realms of Runeterra. He was a prince of Camavor, but he wasn't favored in the royal succession line. At that point, the war had already gone global and reached the Eastern Kingdoms. As a way to try to keep his kingdom safe, the king offered one of his sons to a Darkin that arrived there, and the Darkin accepted. Since the king wasn't stupid, he gave up the son that wasn't a part of the succession line, and that's how Vladimir was handed over to a Darkin. And to the Darkin, humans were basically cattle, good only to serve their goals. Whether that's creating, discovering, conquering, whatever. But here's the thing, Vladimir was cunning and manipulative, so he got close to his Darkin master and tricked him into teaching him blood magic, which was something the Darkin were masters of, since they used it to deform their own flesh. And just to remember, even though they were once human, the Darkin had already gone through the process of ascension and become ascended. Their bodies were deeply modified by magic, so warping themselves the way that they did was definitely an insanely complicated process. Using that arcane knowledge, Vladimir lured his master in and absorbed his power. That doesn't necessarily mean that Vlad is on the same level as a Darkin, since we don't know if he absorbed all the power or how strong that particular Darkin even was. But either way, his magical knowledge plus the Darkin blood he consumed give him enough power to earn 3rd place in Nexus. Now moving on to 2nd place, we've got Swain. Jericho Swain is one of, if not the greatest mind in Nexus. He was born into a Noxian noble family, which gave him access to top secret info, and also a really solid formal education. Combined with his natural intelligence, he quickly became a super important Noxian general. Eventually, in his quest for power, he made a pact with Rom, a demon, probably a primordial one, that was trapped inside the Immortal Bastion, and that his family had been searching for generations. All of that gave Swain enough political and military backing to pull off a coup in Nexus, and crown himself emperor. But fearing his own power and not wanting to repeat the mistakes of his predecessor, he decided to split the throne into 3, founding the Triferix. Considering his intellect, his powers, and almost omniscient knowledge of the demon, Swain is definitely one of the most powerful individuals on the entire planet. On top of that, he's got an army of ravens spread out across the world, constantly watching and gathering information, basically making him aware of everything happening everywhere. And if that wasn't enough, at the end of Katarina's comic, he flies in at the last second and saves Katarina from a bomb explosion, grabbing it with his hand and redirecting it back to her dad, like it was absolutely nothing. So yeah, he's not only magically strong, but he's also insanely powerful physically. All of that makes him possibly the most powerful being alive in Nexus, but not the most powerful overall, because there can only be one at the very top of Nexus, and that is Mordekaiser. Mordekaiser is the foundation of Nexus. In fact, his conquests are the reason the Noxian Empire exists. Back when he was alive, and going by the name San Uzal, he was already one of the greatest conquerors the world has ever seen. However, when he died and made his way into the afterlife, he realized that the glorious future he was supposed to have wasn't real. Instead, there was nothing, just souls fading away into the ether. Furious, San Uzal simply refused to fade away, creating his own kingdom and plotting his return from the grave. He tricked a group of sorcerers into thinking they were resurrecting San Uzal the man. What they didn't expect was that this man no longer existed. What came back was Mordekaiser, the Iron Revenant. When he returned, he could manipulate, absorb, and fuse the souls of living beings. That, combined with his endless hunger for power and the insane physical strength of his new metallic body, let him conquer half the continent, the region that would become Nexus, purely through raw strength. His reign only ended because of LeBlanc's betrayal, which managed to trap him again in the realm of dead. That doesn't mean he died, though. During the thousands of years since then, he's built up a massive army of souls to one day conquer the material world, and now he's just waiting for his chance. Ever since sealing him away, LeBlanc has been working tirelessly, not just to gain more power for herself, but to try to find a way to permanently stop Mordekaiser's return. But she hasn't really been successful. If he ever does come back, it would be a real threat to every society in Runeterra, making him not only the most powerful character in Nexus by far, but also one of the most powerful and dangerous beings in all of Runeterra. Next up, we have Freljord. The Freljord is one of the harshest regions in Runeterra, which means even the weakest champions here are usually way stronger than champions from other places. But in the Freljord, there's a group of beings that are way beyond anyone else's power, and could solo almost the entire world. These are the so-called demigods. And out of them, third place goes to Anivia. Even though she's the weakest of the demigods, she represents the eternal cycle of life, death, and rebirth, as well as the changing of the seasons. It's believed that her arrival brought the very first winters to the world, and people also credit her with the creation of true ice, a rare material that's so cold it can't melt, and can only be wielded by the Iceborn. According to the Runeterran legend, she's also indirectly responsible for all the snow in the Freljord, because she once made Ornn abandon his old home and build a new one. In his absence, Ornn's old home became the source of the region's snow, and like with most demigods, her strength is tied to the amount of belief people have in her. Unlike many of her siblings though, she actually stays present in the lives of her followers, which definitely makes her power significant. Still, that's nowhere near enough to reach second place, which belongs to none other than the spirit of fire, Ornn. Ornn was the very first demigod. His stories say his battle against the planet itself was so epic that not only did it shape the geography of the Freljord, but that the world itself gave him a special primordial flame. They say he's the one who forged the legendary items, and it was while building his home that the Freljord was internally condemned to snow. He believes nothing should ever be made unless it's perfect. Even though he tries to be forgotten, his story keeps being told and his followers continue to grow. There are so many stories, tales, and myths about Ornn that I could spend ages just listing them, which obviously isn't the point right now. Sadly, it's impossible to figure out Ornn's exact power today because of his constant attempts to be forgotten, which, like I said, makes him a lot weaker, but there's no way not to put him here simply because of his feats. The pitchfork that he made to build his home is now used to rule the seas, like the Trident of the Sea King. His skill and obsession with perfection, combined with his raw strength and the powers that he gained from the primordial flame, make him one of the strongest beings in Runeterra, even when weakened. But that weakening is just enough for someone else to be stronger, and that's his younger brother, the storm god himself, Volibear. Volibear is one of the oldest gods in all of the Freljord, and is the embodiment of thunder and storms. Unlike his older brother, he has never stopped fighting and craving bloodshed and savagery. He comes from a time in the Freljord where only the strongest survived. Only those willing to sacrifice absolutely everything for survival could keep standing. And even though Ornn once put him to sleep after a fight when they were younger, the Freljord went through a more peaceful era after that. Volibear despises that peace, seeing it as weakness. After all, strength comes from battles and scars. And he didn't get the nickname the Thousand-Pierced Bear for nothing. Unlike his siblings who approach conflict differently, Voli is pure aggression. He's basically the closest thing to a natural disaster, just killing and destroying without a care in the world. These days, his followers are more numerous and dangerous than ever. The Ursine are those warriors that transform into these dark, beastly bears and embody Volibear himself, being insanely strong and brutal. Sure, Ornn once beat Volibear in a one-on-one fight, but that was in the past. Like I said, most of the divine spirits power come from the faith people put in them. And right now, Volibear's cult is way bigger than Ornn's. I didn't even bring this up earlier, but basically 99% of Ornn's entire cult was wiped out during the fight with Volibear. On top of that, while Ornn spent millennia in his volcano forging, Volibear spent all that time just fighting non-stop. So yeah, right now he's definitely stronger than Ornn. But before that, I'd like to mention that we've got a store. Right now we've got 5 designs available and 1 more on the way. Here's a little spoiler. Anyways, we've got tons of products, so go check them out. Links in the description. And while you're down there, don't forget to subscribe, drop a like on the video, and maybe even consider becoming a member to get access to a bunch of cool perks. Our next region is the First Lands, Ionia. Our third place finisher, who in my heart is actually number 1 and the most powerful being in Runeterra, is Master Yi. A swordsman who mastered one of the most powerful techniques in Ionia, the Wuju. Wuju is a super ancient sword technique that's deeply tied to the spirit of the one practicing it, going all the way back to the Vastaya Shirei. It's all about balancing your physical power with your spiritual energy, making Master Yi as fluid as a spirit himself. To give you an idea, it's said that the Wuju techniques are strong enough to cut through beings the size of mountains, like in the short story Poetry with a Blade, which shows a young Yi learning more about the Wuju and the origins of this insanely powerful in ancient style. During the Noxus invasion of Ionia, they were so scared of Master Yi that they straight up massacred his village and the Wuju Academy. If I remember right, it was with a bunch of singed bombs. Not nuclear, obviously, but like some Chemtech bomb, you know? Just because they were terrified that a Project Master Yi type of thing was being created there. Like a Master Yi 2.0. The whole thing made Yi super depressed, so he isolated himself for a while, but eventually he decided to honor his title as the last master of Wuju and started taking on new students. So yeah, the dude's a beast, no question. Literally the most crazy, broken, insane character in all of the lore. Anyone who says otherwise is just wrong. No disrespect. In second place, we've got Syndra. Syndra was born with crazy spiritual magic, but because of her family and the people who wanted to exploit her raw power, all that potential energy just turned into negative energy, and her overwhelming magic ended up filling her with insane rage. The exact origin of her powers is complicated. Maybe it's some sort of ascension, maybe it came from everything that she went through in life, but what's clear is that nowadays, her power is directly tied to her emotions, and because of all the crap she had to deal with growing up, she became super unstable. That's why she doesn't really have full control over her true powers, which is what made Ionia itself step in and seal her energy inside a magical lake. During the war, she ended up awakening by accident and just decided to leave because she knows that she's ridiculously powerful and that if she loses control, she could wipe out entire villages without even trying. So she literally lifts up an entire temple with her power and decides to live isolated in a floating fortress until Riot figures out what to do with her. Syndra's one of those characters that's so busted, Riot has to nerf her to keep her out of the main story because she just break everything. She could easily be an unbeatable villain or some overpowered hero that ends every threat in seconds. So they just keep her isolated and as neutral as possible. But moving on to first place, none other than Karma. Now, Karma isn't just the woman we play in game. She's actually just the vessel of Karma. Because just like the Avatar, Karma is the spirit of Ionia itself. The literal personification of Ionia inside an enlightened human vessel. The current human is named Dara, and whenever the vessel of Ionia's spirit dies, either in battle or naturally, the spirit reincarnates in a new host, eventually gaining all of the memories of their past lives. Which means Karma is an insanely ancient and powerful Ionian entity. I've talked about this in other videos already, but basically we've seen Karma's powers used to cause damage, like in the Ruination cinematic, but at the same time, the whole nature of Ionia is more about peace and balance, and the spirit's powers obviously reflect that. The thing is, this incarnation of Karma, Dara, has a slightly different perspective than her predecessors. She believes in fighting for peace instead of just waiting for it to come. That gives her a way wiser and very different outlook than Syndra. So yeah, like I said before, I do think Karma would probably lose a 1v1 to Syndra based on what we've seen of their powers so far, but overall, I'd say that Karma is still more powerful. That's because her power isn't just about attacking, you know? She shields, she buffs move speed, and I know it sounds like I'm joking, but that's literally it. Her power just has a different nature, but if we're talking about raw Dragon Ball power level kind of stuff, Karma's level has to be above Syndra's. Next up, Demacia. Demacia's lineup is way easier to rank, because these three are just completely above the rest. In third place, we've got Galio. Nothing better than a giant gargoyle to show off the insane potential of Petricite, the mineral that absorbs magic. And Galio is literally made entirely of it. He spent centuries in Demacia just soaking up energy, until more recent times where he actually started waking up and gaining consciousness, beginning to wonder what he is and what his purpose is. Kinda like the Iron Giant. Galio was supposed to be this big symbol of Demacia's power over mages, but over time, he ended up becoming a symbol of hope instead. And honestly, that's basically it. There's not much more about Galio's lore. The most we've got is that cinematic where he comes crashing down to help Lux against Silas. I really hope Riot does more with him and gives him a proper boost in the lore, because he's basically Demacia's Statue of Liberty. That's sick. On top of that being this massive unstoppable beast, he's also a huge symbol of power for an entire nation. But even with him being this colossal magic absorber, he still doesn't compare to the second place on this list, Morgana. Morgana is an aspect, one of the aspects of justice, and her vision of justice is all about empathy and redemption. She believes people who do wrong can be redeemed, as long as they truly feel guilt. In general, Morgana is a calm, kind character, but when she's fighting, man, she goes crazy. Just look at the Still Here cinematic from last year, where she's literally holding Aatrox back with her ult. Even though she's clearly struggling, like the magic itself is hurting her, she's still insanely strong. She managed to hold back Aatrox after. after. But even being that powerful, Morgana still gets outclassed by our number 1 spot, her twin sister Kayle. She's just way less emotional and empathetic than Morgana, and the main reason there's a difference in power between them is because Kayle fully embraced her natural gift. While Kayle wields both of their mother's swords and channels her natural power, Morgana chooses to study and learn magic. It's kind of like Kayle speaking her native language while Morgana is learning a second one. They're still close in power, but Kayle definitely has the edge over her. Next up, Shadow Isles. In the Shadow Isles, we've got a bunch of insanely powerful specters, but most of them are basically trapped inside the black mist, which means they can only go as far as the mist can spread, and without a doubt, one of the strongest specters there is Maokai. Maokai used to be the spirit that lived on the Blessed Isles before they turned into the Shadow Isles. Even though we don't know exactly how strong he basically is the beginning of the Isles, since he's the one who created all that life that exists there. And since he's a spirit, not a human, who got corrupted by the mist, he's insanely strong. He's just strong. There's nothing much else to say. He doesn't have a ton of feats, but he's super powerful. One thing that adds to his power level is the fact that the reason he survived the fall of the island is because he's infused with the water of life, since he was deeply connected to nature and to the Blessed Isles. It's like instead of having regular blood or whatever flows through a tree, he's got the water of life running through him. And the water of life is ridiculously powerful. It can basically heal any wound and even bring the dead back to life. Unlike the others, who were mostly just regular humans, normal warriors that ended up corrupted, he was already a sick spirit before the corruption. So yeah, taking 3rd place, we've got the big guy himself. Moving on to 2nd place, we've got Thresh. He's one of the main people behind the Ruination, because unlike Hecarim or Viego, he knew exactly what was going to happen when Viego tried to bring his soul back. Thresh is definitely the most sadistic specter in all of the Shadow Isles, because he didn't just kill the souls that crossed his path, he traps them inside his lantern and tortures them. He's the only known specter with the ability to absorb and control other souls besides Viego. After the Ruination, Thresh actually managed to break free from the control of the Black Mist, and now he just roams around tormenting and torturing all kinds of the living beings across Runeterra. Seriously, man, this dude is messed up. He orchestrated a whole revenge plan for years just because he thought he was better than everyone else and deserved more recognition. Instead of being stuck with that boring job he had in the catacombs of the Blessed Isles, he manipulated Viego twice and also messed with GP, Lucian, Callista, and even Rise as shown as in the Ruination novel. Nowadays, he basically doesn't have any limits on his power anymore, since his only weakness was being a specter tied to the Black Mist. Now he's free out there, and we have no idea how strong he actually is. We just know he's crazy powerful, but still, he's behind number 1, which is Viego. The Ruined King is obviously an insanely powerful entity, and a lot of his strength comes from his sword called Sanctity, which is a legendary weapon. This sword can merge with the soul of whoever wields it, and with that, it can manipulate other lost souls wandering around in the Black Mist that Viego controls. During the Ruination story, Viego managed to dominate the souls of several champions with the power of the sword and the mist. And it wasn't just some weak champions, man. He managed to resurrect and control even the aspect of war, Pantheon, inside its host Atreus' body. So yeah, his power to control and manipulate souls and specters basically has no limit. He's got a bunch of absurd souls in his army too, like Camavorian dragons. And since that whole army comes from his power, I count it as his. It's not like just an army of people he commands. It literally comes from him. If Viego wasn't so obsessed with these souls and just decided to focus on conquering Runeterra, the entire Sentinels of Light wouldn't stand a chance. He would have just pulled it off. And on top of that, our 2nd place Thresh literally gets his power from him. Viego is literally the source of Thresh's power, so there's no way Thresh could ever surpass him, you know? He literally comes from Viego. So yeah, Viego takes number 1 spot in the Shadow Isles, and not just as the strongest over there, but also as one of the strongest in all of Runeterra. He'd sure land in a top 10 list. But anyway, that's it. See you in the next one.